That's okay. Um, one minor change. I'm no longer teaching at the University of Minnesota. I retired and then
Okay.
started teaching for another university. So teaching research and statistics. So
Very good.
just to let you know a little bit about my background. So I'd like to know, first of all, what prompted you to come to this session, what you're looking for and what information I can provide to you.
Are you
Um,
asking each of us, Jane?
yes, I am.
Uh, I'm coming because I started out interested in your presentations, and then I was unable to attend a lot of them, so I ended up dropping out. But I just wanted to see how things are progressing and what you're talking about now. So I'm kind of catching up.
Okay. Sally?
One of the reasons I read the article in the Power of the Pen book, and I always think it's good to have ammunition that is science based when somebody says graphologist and they start to laugh. And when you start to talk about the process, I had been calling it brain writing incorrectly. There's so much more that goes into it. So I like any kind of information that can help support the argument that you're all these systems are affecting your handwriting. And so that's
Okay.
why.
And I'm wondering if you would provide your experience, what a little bit in the seminar to Jane, so she has an idea of what we've been up to.
The research summary, it's fantastic. It's a growth process. I started in my project in December of 2022, worked all the way through 23, submitted the article and the research to an occupational therapy magazine, and they said this is a little too academic for our magazine. So now I'm kind of redoing it with an abstract and more journal article accepted sections to follow their guidelines. But it's a wonderful growth process. You make a ton of mistakes, but you learn so much. And Jane is a fantastic guide. Um, she doesn't dictate what to do, but she guides you when you get stuck. She's the statistician, so don't be fearful of the numbers. When you do your research and you gather your data, Jane takes that data and she does her statistics thing, which she specializes in. And then it's just wonderful doing the research of all the other journal articles on the topic that you're doing. Mine's on manual dexterity, and there's a world of materials out there. So you just learn so much. I don't know, Jane, is that's what you meant?
We have been at this for a long time because I was looking back at some of the original notes I had made about people's interests and what they wanted to pursue. And it was 2022, and here we are.
December, yeah. I started gathering data then over Christmas because I had a lot of subjects.
So Chuck or Victor, do you want to say anything about what your experience has been? But Victor,
You're muted, Victor.
you
Yeah,
muted.
I got it.
I,
I wish
I yeah, go ahead.
oh,
Yeah.
go back to the very beginning, and if we'd only known, which is all kinds of things in life happen that way, but realizing that exact steps and accuracy and follow through of good logic would help, as well as looking at the big picture. And that's, we get back to the fundamental question of whatever our research question is, and then to avoid wasted steps, going down paths that aren't going to be rewarding or help the project,
Right.
and then avoid assumptions. A lot of this is completely new, and so
Thanks,
I
Chuck.
wish we could share your brain whenever needed.
Victor, what would you like to
I,
add?
I wanted to say that, it's not just learning how to do research, but by doing it, you actually learn how to critically read the research. And, from your seminars, how to be kind of seeing whether something was a pretty good design research or whether you should just ignore the results of it, you know? Because everybody says research like it's supposed to be prove something, and it doesn't always do that. That's what
That's,
I've really learned, yeah, to be
that's right.
more critical about, yeah.
And that leads me to probably one of the major objectives of the seminar is how to think analytically,
Mhm.
because there are two forms of learning that people engage in. One is the guru learning approach, which means that someone is told to is described as some great genius, some huge leader, some innovator, and we all need to follow along like little ducklings. Um, and if you don't believe what this person is saying, there's something wrong with you. And this has been a very broad streak throughout most of mental health studies. So people, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when psychodynamics was the only way to approach anything. And if you disagreed or even asked how people came to their conclusions, it was often, well, you're resistant. You have a conflict with, obviously, I got this all the time. You have a conflict with authority. Like,
Mm.
sorry about that. But you would never think that way in a chemistry class or an engineering class or any class where you have to be sure that what you're saying is accurate because people's lives depend on it. And or their well-being depends on it in some way. So but this was very, very common. And then behaviorism came in and challenged it. And the people that started with behaviorism had enough clout that they weren't completely shut down. But I remember one time, one of my psychology professors who eventually switched into statistics said, was at one of these seminars with a prominent educator kind of person, and in the field, and asked a question like this, how did you come to your conclusion? And he was told that he was too disturbed to be in the field, which freaked him out, of course, until he started taking statistics classes and realized, wait a minute, this is what we need to do. We have so many assumptions, and many of them, as I've mentioned to our seminar class, are based on the fact that the leaders in psychology were largely, the giants in psychology, the type of psychology that we use to understand people, started well over 100 years ago in Europe with affluent white males. And the whole world has changed since then. So we need to think about, when we're making a conclusion about somebody, why are we choosing this interpretation? What assumptions does this involve? And I just did a quick scan of the literature in our university library to find out how many handwriting articles had been written in the last 2 years. So I wrote this Power of the Pen article in 2022. So how many articles in 2023 and 2024? Now understand that articles can come from research conferences, which then are published, which then are excerpted from another source might excerpt part of it and publish part of it. So these aren't all individual articles. there are many duplicates, but there were 7,000 handwriting articles written in the last 2 years. And this is what the whole idea of handwriting analysis is, making a rapid transition from the kinds of things that we did. Well, okay, I'm going to back up because I'll get there in a minute. But one thing that truly, truly bothers me, because I've seen this in mental health, and that has changed dramatically in the last 30 years or so since I've been in the area, but 40 years. But when we take these old interpretations that don't account for diversity, that don't account for the fact that not everybody is a highly educated, privileged person living in affluence who goes to salons to philosophize with their buddies every day, we can do some real harm to people. And so, what does form level really mean? What about the plumber who works with his hands and broke a few fingers along the way, and their handwriting isn't as beautiful? Can we really evaluate that in the same way as someone who's been an academic or worked very gently with their hands? So there are all these kinds of things. So I've asked people to think critically, and critical doesn't need to be negative, but think analytically is the better word. Why are we assuming what we're assuming? Why are we interpreting it in a certain way and not in a different way? And that's a lot of what we look at in the seminar class. Now, I'd just like to mention what's going on in the handwriting world when I evaluated to just go through what kind of publications are going on. And the good news is a lot of publications. The bad news is the methods that many of us use traditionally are not being found to be very valid for personality interpretation. They have a whole different function. And I think it's valuable and should be considered. But if someone says, it looks from your handwriting that you're under a lot of pressure, that starts a whole conversation where people start disclosing what's going on, or one of those things. I think it has a real value in that situation. Or you'll say, I'm getting a sense from your handwriting that something really significant happened to you. I'm going to guess about 15 years ago that really changed the course of your life. And people will either say, no, it wasn't then, it was like 20 years ago, and this is what happened. So it starts a conversation at a much deeper level than just, okay, this is the spit out from the computer that says this indication means this, and you're this and this and this and this, which doesn't really assist very much. But what is going on in the research world, there are two major areas. One is the influence on education and learning, which is voluminous. And this is where technology has been a very good friend to handwriting, because studies are being done. About 10 years ago, a professor at Indiana University was hooking up little kids to these neurological devices to watch brain waves, and saw different patterns with printing and cursive and just and no handwriting practice at all. So she was working primarily with preschoolers and saw an amazing difference, that the use of the hand, not in just fine motor skills either. So because a lot of teachers work with fine motor skills, you know, little pieces, little peg games and little tying things and buttoning and all those kinds of hand exercises. They were helpful, but nothing was as helpful as writing. And it helped children decode information. It helped children express themselves better. And because they could express themselves better, and little children don't have a real insight into their feelings, it helped them express themselves better, so that their emotions could be addressed. What they also found was that in general, the ball and stick kind of manuscript printing that we often use was harder for the children, because it meant that they had to be very accurate in when they started a letter and when they stopped a letter, and you know, those kinds of things. So to write a simple word involved, for each letter, involved about 7 stop and start motions, which is taxing. But cursive, which is much more forgiving in that regard, was much less stressful for the children. So these researchers were saying probably better to start with cursive. And in the Netherlands and in France, that's what they do. They start handwriting training around age 3. And it's a very simplified cursive. So since that time, there's been study after study after study in people from all countries, primarily in Europe and in China, where they find that the ideograms that are used in Chinese writing also have a similar effect on reading. So, and then this is the study I love this so much because it deals with mathematics. And there were researchers that were studying this phenomenon of does handwriting help you detect information and interpret it and comprehend it better? And they said, okay, so here we'll have the kids read some text, then we'll have them just look at some numbers and practice some numbers, and that'll be our control group, because they had no expectation that the kids would do better in mathematics by handwriting words. Well, guess what? And there have been other studies since then that say that children are much better able to comprehend the meaning of numbers, of a number like a 4, you know, I mean, these are all done on young children. So there's something to be said about, you know, being cautious about, excuse me, extrapolating this to adults. But the fact of the matter is, writing the numbers help them understand them better. And I taught an education class when we had students, masters in education students from all disciplines. And I remember the math teacher struggling with how do you work with manipulatives to get children to comprehend, you know, the number line and that kind of thing. And now it was in their hand all the time, but they didn't realize that handwriting had that impact on mathematical learning. So I subscribe to this app called Nextdoor. I don't know if you know about it in your community, but people say, you know, I need a plumber, and people chime in to say, well, I use this guy and don't use that guy, you know, that kind of thing. And yesterday, I love this. Somebody said, oh, my kid has to do this handwriting homework, and I don't know if this is any good, and you know, what a waste of time, and you know, on and on. And people were saying, oh no, what a mistake. This is going to help them, you know, really ground their skills in understanding and in reading and in math, and it's better than anything, and it's cheap, and it doesn't require any technology, and anyone can do it. And I'm thinking, yay, we're getting the message out. So hooray, hooray for that. So, um, I don't know who's getting the message out in my neighborhood, which is just east of St. Paul, Minnesota, but it's getting there. And as much as you can promote this is science-based to the core. So all of this is done with, very clear technology, very clear research designs by highly trained scientists, much of it relying on technology to get accurate data. It doesn't get any better than that. At least that's at this stage of the game. So I just want to stop there for a second. Oh, here's one that just came out, and it was related to using Zaner-Bloser, and which is a handwriting method for teaching penmanship, and how much it was used in the classroom and its effect, okay, I gotta back up. So what they did was they looked at schools that used Zaner-Bloser almost none at all, kind of a moderate amount or a high amount. And the goal was to see how standardization in handwriting instruction would affect legibility and fluency in handwriting. And the goal was not that it was about Zaner-Bloser. It was about a consistent, well-practiced method without a lot of different instruction and different standards and things like this, which Sally discovered was an important feature of handwriting. And the ones that used the Zaner-Bloser program the most had kids who learned to write efficiently, legibly, and fluently in the shortest time. So clearly, it's practice makes progress. And the more people can stick with one system, the better off they are in learning how to write fluently. So the transition that we make in U.S. schools, which is not used worldwide, is we start children with printing, and then they have to transition to cursive. And of course, it's difficult. Now they've got two competing handwriting systems. Well, that's a sure recipe for failure. So the thing to do is to stick with one, to practice consistently until it's so embedded that people can start manipulating it, which actually happens around fourth grade. People start using their own individual features. So that one just came out, and I think that has something to do with how we should approach handwriting as well. So when people are saying, yes, it's wonderful, it helps make sure that they understand that the child should be using one system until the system is highly embedded. And their handwriting will be fluent, barring disabilities and other things. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second and ask if anyone has any reactions, any thoughts, any questions.
Oh, Jane, I thought of
Jane,
something. I'm thinking about my, my 4-year-old granddaughter, and wonder if there are a good beginning cursive instruction practice books that you know of, or how to track those down.
I don't know of any. Well, actually, I do. The italic handwriting system seems to be the easiest for kids to learn. I don't
Which one
know
is that?
if it's italic. Let's see. I have it handy here. Oh.
Isn't it Irish
Chuck, my
Hatfield?
grand
This
Iris
is,
Hatfield, she
Yeah,
has a
I
system too, and a
yeah,
good
she
little
does.
book.
Yeah, 3 books. I get them all.
here's one, fluent handwriting, and this one is by Nan Barkowski. Let's see if I can. So Nan Barkowski, and her her idea is pretty simple for helping the students make the fewest number of strokes necessary for the writing to be legible.
Iris Hatfield's is like that also. It's a simplified version of American handwriting system.
It's really good. Yeah. She has
Yes.
workbooks and practice
Workbooks
sheets.
and they're really nice to use.
Yes.
Yes. So this one has some printing in it, so I'm not going to go there, but it's
Jane,
yes.
we were talking about Iris Hatfield has a very good book out for practicing handwriting, and she has developed a simple version of cursive handwriting. It's a very good system.
There's 3 books. The beginner, I mean, grades. 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. So I get them from my kids, all of them. They have them all.
Wonderful. Yeah, I haven't seen it for a while. The other thing is, I thought that Jeanette Farmer's program was very good because kids, okay, and this also works in handwriting therapy and actually physical therapy in general, to have a sound, a rhythmic sound that they can coordinate with. And she had a variety of musical selections that she would use to accompany her handwriting program. There's something about hearing a rhythm that assists the fluency and the hand movement.
I would
Jane,
think
I found Iris's book,
Yeah.
and you can get it off of her website. New American Cursive Penmanship Program. I don't know if you can see that very well, but
That's very good. Thank you.
I was thinking that that movement, the kind of having that continuous movement is very powerful. That when you were talking about how it was more difficult with all of those stops. So there's like a rhythm. And so it would make sense that the music, being able to get into a rhythm with that movement and the music and the writing would really kind of support that kind of learning, that kind of
Right. And you can extend that information like we've been talking about how handwriting assists with comprehension. Comprehension isn't a memorization of things. It connects from something that came previously to something ahead. So you're thinking you're not just focused on one little bit of information. So this is one reason why math is so difficult for some people, because they don't see the connection to anything before or anything after. And I will just tell you right now, I'm going to head out onto a rant. The use of keyboarding is completely at odds with what we're talking about, because with these neurological testing devices, they have noticed that keyboarding uses the same kind of brain connections, or evokes the same kind of brain potentials and so on as drumming. Now, drumming is an art. There's no problem with drumming. I have no disagreement with drumming, but it doesn't lead to those kinds of movements don't have any connection to what came before, what came after. So given that, and they did this study with kids and with trained typists, because most typists have patterns for their hands as they're keyboarding, and it did not have the same kind of brain activation that involved better comprehension and so on and so forth. So, or spelling, quality of the text, all of those things are impacted by being unable to connect a flow of communication in handwriting. And right now, if you the jury is really out on whether cursive or printing are more effective for adults, for well-experienced writers, because if you have somebody printing on a digitizing tablet, the digitizing tablet actually picks up signals that are about, up to about this far above the tablet. And you can see that the only difference is that people are lifting the pen for a short time, but they're actually doing a cursive movement. So you get this hybrid kind of printing cursive pattern that you can see very clearly on a digitizing tablet. That's why they say, well, my printing is fine. Well, you're not really printing. It looks to the eye like you're printing, except with kids when they do the stop, start. That's different because there's a clear ending point. But most people kind of just, when they're printing fast. And the only thing that's different is that little bit of friction connection. So that's why they can't clearly distinguish the difference in adults between the effects of printing and cursive, except for the rare kinds of professional printing, like an architect or an engineer. When I worked for IBM, we were trained in a particular kind of printing that was very methodical, and you stopped after every letter and you lifted the pen, that's different. But the kind of printing that most adults do is really a disguised kind of cursive.
Jane, that is very interesting, because when I was distinguishing between the more rigid printing and that flow that you're talking about as calling it three-dimensional cursive. And the analyst, the handwriting analyst can see how that movement is continuous by the way those strokes fade and then how they come back in. There's like a particular way that they look that you can see they didn't stop. They just moved into the air stroke kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting. Yeah.
It's very interesting stuff. Now I'd like to tell you about the volume of handwriting research that's going on in regard to to machine learning. So machine learning is using computers basically to evaluate all sorts of things concurrently. Pressure, location, pixel by pixel. And then what they do is they get a huge database, and then they use that database to evaluate, different handwriting features. And it started with neural nets, which, please don't ask me to explain how this all works, but it's all deep computer learning stuff. It's the same kind of mechanisms in artificial intelligence, that sort of thing. And most of the research is occurring in India, China, non-Western countries. And they are finding that there are personality correlates to a few handwriting features. So where in the kind of handwriting research that we have done in Europe and the US, for the most part, up to this point, we've used, the systems from Europe, basically, that originated in Europe. Those are not showing validity. And that has bothered a lot of people, because how can people say, oh, you've described me perfectly, so there's face validity, but when it comes to any other kind of meaningful comparisons, handwriting analysis does not perform well in the way that we have done it. So it's interesting that technology is coming to our rescue. So these deep learning electronic methods of looking at handwriting in minuscule ways, measuring, slight variations in pressure, are starting to show some interesting things. And one of the things they've done is find they don't go through all the kinds of interpretations that we do. That has been a problem for us, because the reality is the more features you look at, the more sample you need. And if you're looking at 10 different features in a handwriting, which we easily do, you need at least 100 samples of that particular indicator. Well, unless you have people write a novel, it's going to be pretty hard to get the kinds of things. When you look at like the IGAS screen sheet, that has what, 40 or something? Well, now you're looking at a need for 4,000 indicators. Yikes. I did a study. I still haven't finished it because I have traumatic stress disorder from it. I think we had a person write checks. We gave a name, it was the Henrik Manufacturing Company, and the date, and she signed it with her signature. And we had her do it under different lighting conditions and different postural conditions. And it took me, okay, so to measure all these factors, we had, oh gosh, I think we had at least 100 checks. And I had to do maybe, 17, 18 handwriting indicators per check. It took me over a year to do all the measurements. I thought I was going to lose my mind. How high is the I dot above the I, and what, how many millimeters is it off center, and all these kinds of things. So I'm very grateful that machine learning has taken over some of this stuff. But what they tend to look at are the big five personality factors: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. That's it. They don't look at, what your ambitions are, or your, sexual proclivities and all this kind of stuff. So they just limit it to a very few, and they're running about 80% accuracy, which is better than we get in our kind of systems. Because if you have two handwriting analysts looking at the same short sample, you often get very different interpretations, different emphases in particular. Some people focus on one thing, some people on another. That's the kind of consistency lack that is making it very hard for people to take us seriously and consider it, other than, just maybe your intuition is is discerning the handwriting features. So, and what one of the recent articles said was the subjectivity in evaluating handwriting has been a very significant problem. And I think that what we're going to eventually have to do is take a serious look at what the machine learning is detecting and change some of our interpretations, maybe many of them, to what these have. There are very large databases now. I just read about one in Egypt from some Egyptian researchers, I should say. And they have thousands and thousands of handwriting indicators that they are using for their studies, and trying to see which ones are meaningful, which ones don't have consistent interpretations on these 5 measures. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is, as I said at the beginning, so many of our interpretations come from first world, fairly affluent, fairly educated male sample. Okay. Now, I don't mean to offend anybody, but this is who was doing psychology back then. You know, you had until Freud's daughter started doing a few things that didn't seem to be a womanly thing to do. So those interpretations came from a male perspective. That's been a concern in psychology now for quite a while. And in China, they're starting to look at a whole different set of personality features, and that they call the Confucian literati personality. Where they look at the features that they look at are, of course, Chinese writing is very different. It's calligraphy, but they look very carefully at visual attention, cognitive activation, physiological slowdown, emotional relaxation, and behavioral change. Because in their view, you know, they're correlating their personality factors with the principles of Confucianism. And I've heard from some others that some of the handwriting analysts in India are also trying to move out of the psychodynamic kind of interpretations from the West into personality evaluations that involve, and excuse me my ignorance, the gods and goddesses of the Hindu religion, that those are the key features that would, say, indicate form level. You know what, and instead of what we use, and how we interpret form level, they look for the features that are associated with the Hindu deities, and then use those in their analysis. So the diversity in our studies is finally coming absolutely fascinating. So for this Chinese study, and that again, this is from the last 2 years. So they're looking at the positive effect of emotions related to learning, and these are the features I mentioned: visual attention, cognitive activation, physiological slowdown, emotional relaxation, and behavioral change, because they want a very calm and focused and thoughtful personality. That should be reflected in form level, not the way that we interpret these things. So I'm really pleased to see that. So the fact that so much machine learning is occurring, that it's occurring in non-Western countries, engineers, computer scientists, they're all into it. I mean, 7,000 entries in the database from the last 2 years alone, and they're either in education or in the machine learning areas, and a few graphological things that really don't show a great deal. So that is going to change the whole landscape for handwriting analysis, because culture has a huge difference on personality. We know that. And culture has a huge difference on the way people write. So we've got a lot of opportunities for learning, because ultimately handwriting is an embodied form of cognition. It reflects how we think, and given practice. And it does reveal a great deal, but I think that for in many situations, our interpretations have been constrained by lack of knowledge of actually what's going on in culture. So in the last couple of days, there have been some discussions in the discussion group online on this isolate pen that detects mood and so on and so forth, that people have been talking about. And what it does is it evaluates pressure and changes in pressure, which we have difficulty really assessing very well by just looking at the ductus, especially with our current pens. So it looks at pressure, it looks at rhythm, changes in pressure as someone writes, which can be very, very subtle, and again, difficult to see. Grip and what they call shear. And I don't know enough about shear, but it has to do with friction and how much friction is involved in the writing process. So that's how they're determining when there is a disturbance. So if there are a lot of changes in pressure, or if the pressure is excessive, that's a red flag. And that might signal all sorts of things. It could signal not feeling well, being hungry. And because they can use the pen in many situations, it's not just like writing one sample and then making an evaluation from it. They can use it throughout different tasks, different writing tasks over time. You can see, is this a consistent pattern? Is this just a temporary thing that went away after lunch? It's so informative. And I think that's going to give us all a lot of information to work from.
Jane, is that the study that they're doing in the Philippines?
Yes.
Okay, I read their report, which was phenomenal, but it did not, I don't know if this is typical in reading research reports. They did not say what kind of remediation they gave, based on the data on those pens. They left out a lot of details, and I didn't know if that's typical or if they're doing that because they want to commercially market it.
No, it's very unusual for a research project to both find the factor and provide a solution. So someone will say, based on this article, we we attempted this remediation or that remediation, and this worked and this was less effective, and so on and so forth. So usually that's like the next step. So right now they're just saying, here is the product. This is what it's revealing. Someone should take it to the next level.
Okay. So it's the next level that will give us the details.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to, as a timekeeper, I wanted to make a note that there's about 5 minutes left to the hour. Just
I have another question then.
yeah, go ahead.
Jane, I understand the use of musical background when you're learning cursive or for the rhythm. Have there been any studies that incorporate the use of music at the same time as handwriting?
I don't know of any off the top of my head. I do know that physical therapists use it a lot in helping people with walking and things like that. There's one other thing I want to say. I wanted to follow up on the question about remediation. And that is that one of the studies that was recently done on handwriting in boys and girls found, again, with brain technology, that boys and girls do use different pathways for writing, which accounts for the fact that some girls are better than boys. And they're saying that handwriting remediation, needs to be different for boys and girls.
Mhm.
Or they're suggesting it may be useful to them. They're always tentative about these things. So I think that's an interesting thing too. But again, what we learn and practice is because of neuroplasticity of the brain, what we learn and practice changes the brain. So it's possible that the differences between boys and girls are because boys have not had the same level of practice as girls. When you think about it, most boys' activities involve things like balls and tools that involve whole hand movements. Girls are picking stuff off the floor and buttoning their doll's dress and all these kinds of things that use these very small pincher type movements. So in the olden days, when before we had all of our modern conveniences, boys would be making knots and tying fish lures and all those kinds of things that really develop those fine motor skills. Now they don't. They'll just use a clip or something like this that's already attached. So it's not clear to me that the brain is fundamentally different, but that what you practice is what you get.
It makes sense.
Oh,
And
so
anybody in education knows every child learns a little differently and needs a little different way to learn it.
so instead of brain writing, which was like from the 1890s, we should be talking about brain plasticity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Jane,
Is-
you used the word mind writing at one point, or someone did.
Somebody did, yeah.
Is that closer to what we're aiming for?
No.
Well, don't sugarcoat it like that. Okay.
How do you define mind?
Yeah.
See, this is a lot of what we've done. We use these we all think we know, but if I asked everybody to write down what's your definition of mind, we'd get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We get 9 different definitions. And that, I think, is one of our problems and why it's so important for handwriting analysts to learn to think analytically and be precise and say, this is this and that is that. Because if you say, well, you have kind of an optimistic view. Well, that's good. When do I have that? Or how much of it do I have? And so on and so forth. So, ambiguity covers a multitude of sins. And so the problem is we haven't been precise enough to really get down to the specifics of what these various handwriting indicators actually mean.
Is my mic on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Whoops. I may have just turned it off. I just have been wondering, can you see this printing?
Yes.
Let me back it up. They're my great nephew on the top and niece on the bottom, and they are 14 and 16. They've been in a private school in Virginia all their schooling, and my heart just sank when I looked at it, and even the content of the message totally lacks imagination that would come with cursive. Is there anything you can do that late?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There are handwriting remediation specialists that work at it. And especially, if anyone wants to learn calligraphy, that's a handwriting system too. And it takes a lot of practice. A lot of practice. But you're right.
These two would go for calligraphy. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
We're at the little past the hour. I'd like to tell you, Jane, I'd love to listen to you for about 2 or 3 hours. But let's announce, for the you're starting up another seminar
Right.
the AHAF members at the end of this month.
Yeah. On Monday the 27th at 5 o'clock Pacific time, we'll be redoing the seminar. And so we'll be talking about, again, the basics of analytical thinking, how it's going to apply to the program so that we're more specific about what we're doing. And then we'll talk about how to form a research project and hopefully complete one. And we're well along the way on some of the handwriting projects in the current seminar, really reaching the point of data collection, data analysis, submitting for publication, which is wonderful. Because if we don't do this, we're going to be out of a job. I mean, because if the computer can do it better than we can, who's going to need our services?
Yeah.
So I hope that this is useful to you. You're all welcome to attend the seminar. And I hope to see you in other programs.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to say, Jane, if you're not able to attend the seminar, and practice the experiments, contact Jane to be a participant in
Yes.
somebody's research, because
Yes.
the people that are, the students that are following the seminar, they don't just listen to a lecture. She actually has us do something.
And by the way, speaking of, there are a number of people, including Victor, so I'm going to make an advertisement here, who are looking for handwriting, people to participate in his handwriting survey, which is what did we say it was? Roughly 10 minutes, 15?
Yeah, it takes about 10 minutes. We say 10, 15 minutes for each trial. So
Right.
but it's usually like 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes
And it does
to it.
not, see, the thing that I think always upsets people and makes them worried is, oh, am I going to be found wrong? And that's not the kind of study that it is at all. We're just asking people to identify certain handwriting features and ultimately compare with non-graphologists, but that's down the road.
Yeah.
So the idea is just to,
We're just collecting data.
just
And
collect
yeah.
data.
And whoever does it, they're never associated with actually the data because it's all confidential, like your personal identity and all of that is separate from it. It's all, what do you call it? Aggregated or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we can say, oh, we need research, we need research, we need research. But when it comes to, putting a commitment to do something, we aren't getting good response. And that's really disappointing because we can't get the research we need if we don't participate in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you haven't contacted Victor, please do. It's an easy task. A kid could do it, but
Yeah.
and in fact, if you have, well, we decided that it would be adults only just because of the legalities of getting consent.
Yeah.
But if you've got a college student, coming home for the weekend and you can offer them the car keys if they spend 10 minutes working on this project, please do.
Yeah. So see, there's ways you can be kind of involved and actually what I realized was by participating, you actually learn by doing. You get an idea of what a research is like, and it can kind of inspire you, or, next time uh, Jane does the seminar series, then you can be kind of coming with a little bit of experience. Oh, okay, now I understand how all of this fits together. So I think it's like it's not just helpful to the people that are doing the research, but for you who's uh, participating and doing a little following something like doing some handwriting. You see, there's certain conditions that you have to do because it's designed to be an experiment. And so you feel how that is. You may not know what's going on exactly or what the experiments, like exactly trying to study, but you can feel how the precision is being done and the simplification. And thanks to Jane, yes, it became very simple. I would have made it real complicated. Yeah. Okay.
And Victor, is yours on the size?
It it's about perception of size in the handwriting, yeah. Perception and handwriting.
Good. I hope to be part of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Well,
help you with it.
yeah, just send me an email.
I did.
Okay. I'm gonna be contacting you.
Okay.
I got that.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
this week. Yeah.
Thank
I'm a
you.
little behind. Thanks for reminding me. But yeah. Um, so I think that uh it's about 9 after the hour. And yeah, go ahead, honey.
Oh, no, I was just
Oh, okay. I thought you um
preparing for the end,
yeah.
but thank you very much.
Yeah. And actually several of you have contacted me. So I'll be emailing you and I'll be kind of following up with how we're working with it. There are people in different parts of the world that I'm working with and I'm handling each differently because of the mailing aspect. Just to let it will, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so any last minute questions? Comments. Next month, third Thursday is Manley is covering her her essay is on let's see if I can, and we'll be sending this out. The copybook surprise Etta Manley is going to be talking about her essay on the copybook surprise, which is very interesting because it's about there were handwriting. Speaking about the practice of handwriting, this was like a handwriting practice book from the 1840s that
Wow.
I guess someone had her like look at the handwriting and tell them something about it. And so she talks about this story and about the people and the kind of the uh how much, I mean, it's a fascinating story that comes out of this people who had written their names or written into this copybook of a handwriting book and practicing from back then. And she talks about that whole thing. It's really interesting. Yeah.
That is fascinating because remember, we were taught penmanship.
Yes.
Writing was considered a man's job. And there was even a lady's hand that was simpler because they thought handwriting in the way that it was done in the 1800s, early 1800s at least, was too difficult for women. And
Yeah.
only men had the hand skills to do it. And now we took that. And that's another reason why we think, well, this has to do, the brain differences have to do more with practice than actually anything anatomical.
Yeah.
Well,
Good.
thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. And if questions occur to you afterwards, feel free to contact me or contact Victor and he'll forward them to me. And I'll respond as best I can.
And this is the other
Thank
thing.
you.
Anyone can go, and Jane, by the way, anyone can go to the website. They've set up a page for the Power of the Pen Book Club. It's under join on the menu, and underneath membership join, it says Power of the Pen Book Club. And on that page will be the link to the video, to the Zoom, because
Oh,
it's
good.
a link. So you can just go there for the Zoom link. You can go there to find the book, The Power of the Pen. It's connected to the Trisha's bookstore and the information about the power of the pen. And there's a specific group for the power of the pen discussion, the Gaggle email group that you can join. I'm not putting people's name in there. I'm letting people to sign up. And the reason there's a separate one is because this is open not just to AHAF members. This is open to anyone. And so it's an independent from the AHAF members uh kind of listserv group. So
Membership.
you can sign up there, and I think I have you. I put the authors in that group, so anyone who's in that group and sends an email, um, they'll be able to see, and you would be able to see directly. That's the reason for that.
Oh,
Specific
good.
for the
Thanks.
power of the pen. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is actually the second meeting. So, you know, it'll come. I'm just amazed. Thank you, Jane, so much. This is
Yes, thank you so much.
yeah, yeah. And thanks everyone for coming on. I see
Thank
why.
you.
Hey, we did it about like last time. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, Kish.